Good morning, friends. I'm starting something new today, and it's not new, but I want to give you an overview of where I want to go with this Bible training. Now, I don't know if I'll call it a Bible Training Institute, but I want it to be a source of information that has some type of credible background. Recently, I checked into one of these free Bible study courses that are being offered. And the gentleman that was conducting the school contacted me, and I talked to him and asked him several questions. And I did not ask him about a doctrinal statement or where his background was, where he came from. I asked about the school he went to, and it was a foreign school, as far as I know. I never heard of this, but you can have all kinds of Bible schools, even started by cults, and then give it a legal name. But if you don't know what their teachings are, you don't know what you're getting. And I meant to ask him for some type of doctrinal statement at the outset, so we knew what he believed and what he was trying to teach through the study. And so, what I want to do, I want to begin these lessons, by giving you first a doctrinal statement of where I stand. My doctrinal statement is not complicated, it's detailed, it's non-controversial, it's non-sectarian, and it's one that any Christian could grasp and claim as legitimate, because it doesn't get into any opinionated doctrines as sometimes espoused by certain denominations. So the first thing I will do is give you a copy of my doctrinal statement. Now, later on, I think what would be a good idea, the outset, it might be a little bit too complicated. But what I would like to do at the end of all of this is use the doctrinal statement as a form of doctrinal teachings. In other words, I would take each point and elaborate on it to give the meaning and the biblical background for that, and it would serve as a type of doctrinal study. When I went to Bible school, we did have courses in Bible doctrine, so I thought by making the doctrinal statement later on as an actual teaching of the doctrine, then you will be apprised of what it all means. But I'll send that to you. And if there's anything that you object to, let me know. I don't think there'll be anything. My friends, I don't get into the area of charismatic teachings. I don't get into the area of the second coming or anything that might be considered controversial. There may be some people in our group who lean toward Calvinism, and other may lean toward Arminianism. That is not a consideration. There's room for both in this study. So I just want you to know at the outset of what I'm doing. Now, I've already formulated in my mind where I want to go and my purpose. I know that all of you probably have had some types of Bible and seminary teaching. I take that for granted. But what I'm putting forth to you is something that you could share with the people you are discipling. They don't have this kind of background. And so you could be their teacher. But what I'm giving to you is uh, simplified forms of teachings that will help them to understand and use the Bible in an effective way. As we begin these lessons, you could begin right away sharing these messages with your disciples, and they can also. So this is more than just me teaching you. This is an opportunity for you to begin training the people in your groups. Now, what I'm going to do with these studies, I'm going to make it really easy. The first one I'm going to do is a series of studies on how to study the Bible. I did part one already. It's kind of a general idea. One of the men at work one day was interested in knowing how to study the Bible. So I put forth this first lesson on how to study the Bible. And when he read it, he said to me, I can't wait to get started. So it had a positive effect on the man when he read the little article I gave to him on how to study the Bible. So I put together a book on that. But what I'm going to do is I'm putting the book into sections so you will be able to use them. So what I'm doing is I'm giving you the audio, I'm giving you the whole lesson in writing, and I'm putting discussion questions at the end. Now here is how I would if I was teaching it, I would do it this way. First of all, I would give the general survey as a lecture. Talk to them, let them know where you're going with the class, what you intend to do. And then at the first session, give them the questions for the first chapter. In other words, give them a general idea of Genesis and where you want to go with it. And then give them the questions to answer. Now, that means you need to do it too. So as you receive these questions, make sure you know the answer to all of them before you give them to anyone else. You see, they're going to come back and they're going to ask you questions about these statements. And if you don't know how to answer them yourself, you're going to be at a spot and you're going to lose your credibility as a teacher. So before you begin to share these things, the outline, any of these, I'm giving them to you as suggested teachings. You can use mine and they probably would be all right. But you might find in some cases that maybe you want to do something with the outline or the general teaching in a different way to suit the people that you're working with. Not everything is customized for one kind of people. So we want these teachings to be flexible so they meet the needs of your group. So as you look at the general teaching, find out if it's acceptable to you. If you think it's too complicated or needs to be changed or you'd like to make it better, that's good. That's what this whole thing is about. You're the teacher and you have a group of disciples you're training. So you need to train them the way you think using your own illustrations. But what I'm doing is I'm giving you something that's already made up that I can share because I put it together. Now, when we get to the questions, I have about 10 questions after each section. Now, if you give these questions at the end of the class, you say, now next week, when we get together, we're going to discuss your answers. So that then when you come together to answer those questions, you will able to give further insights into the whole of the chapter, the whole survey of the chapter. So when they begin digging in and finding the answers to the questions, you could give them the answers in the next question, in the next session. But make sure they have the questions to answer themselves first. It's sort of like an assignment you're giving them. Now, some of them may get busy and they might not be able to answer all the questions. That's okay. Some of them will and some of them won't. But it's important that once you give them the questions, that you have a time where you can answer them for them. This is the way they taught us at Prairie. We had all these questions we had to answer, and the teacher lectured on them in the next session of the class, and then she called on us without notice to read our answers that we put down just to check it, and none of us knew when we were going to get called upon. So that's kind of a good way of doing things. So that's the way I'm going to conduct all these lessons. Now I'm giving you the audio as well. Now you can play the audios instead of lecturing yourself on it. And they can listen to the audio and they can ask some questions and discuss what they heard. You might have a couple of things you want to give to them, and then assign the questions for them for the next class session. Then this way it takes two lessons to complete one, because you have to have the time when they can review the questions and think about them and give their answers and then share them in class the next time. So that's the general way I'm going to do it. So I'm going to start with the general study on the New Testament, how to study the Bible, why study the Old Testament, why it is important, talking about the Gospel of Mark, why do we have a Gospel of Mark and how it's different than the rest, what about the book of Acts. So there's and then at the end we give a little general idea of all the books of the New Testament. Now this is not your survey, this is just an introductory study to get people interested in studying the Bible. Now, I'm going to begin with the Old Testament. Now, I put together a book called The Simple Guide for Teaching the Bible, and I have all the books of the Old Testament that I have completed. Now, I have never done a New Testament like that. So while we're doing the studies in the Old Testament, which will take probably a year to answer all the questions and go through all the books of the Old Testament. But that's good. Your people are going to have a good understanding of the Bible and its contents by the time you complete. And they'll be able to do the same with others as well. So besides training you, we're training you how to train somebody else. And if our teaching doesn't do that, then the whole purpose of the discipleship ministry is of naught. So I wanted to let you know what I'm doing here. And so when they come, you'll know. I'm going to start with the Old Testament first. And like I said, I just put together some online studies on New Testament survey. So I'll be working on those and building on it and putting together eventually a New Testament version of this first book on outline study or simple studies in teaching the Bible. So I have only done the Old Testament in detail, and as I present them to you, I may make some changes even in what I've done already. So I'm looking for ways to improve everything. But as I give them to you, hopefully they'll be in a form that's acceptable and usable and will be beneficial. So what you're doing is I'm giving you a Bible training, and you are providing that as well for the people you're discipling. And they will be able to teach Sunday schools or Bible teachings because they will have that background to do that. And there's other things. See, I study a different way when I'm writing my books and I'm expounding the scripture. I shared with you before, but I'll do it again in a future time. So I want to let you know what I'm doing here. And so be prepared. I'm going to put together an outline of my biblical doctrine so you know where I stand and what my background is, and that I'm not some kind of cult or off breed form of Christianity. I want everything to be perfectly biblically soundly sound base for teaching. Well, I hope you'll pardon my fluttering. Sometimes I don't like the way I do things, so I do them over again. I'm not going to do that today, I don't think, but I think I've done, and I share with you what I'm going to do. But I just want to keep you aware of what's on my agenda and what I intend to do these next weeks as I begin to set forth some type of teaching that are transferable to those you are discipling. I mean, after all, if you can disciple somebody, you have to know what you're doing, right? So let's start with me. And as I put these together, I'll try to make them as simple and least complicated as possible. Like I said, when you get these lessons and before you give them to your students, make sure they are in a form that you're comfortable with. There's got to be a starting point somewhere. And like I always say, it's got to start with me first. Because if I don't know what I'm talking about, I won't help anybody else either. So I said enough. I'll get back to you and we just watch for a copy of the doctrinal statement, which I'll be submitting shortly. See you later.